and welcome from snowy Edmonton today. We've had snow coming since last night, so this picture is kind of appropriate. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor. If you are new to signing in to our channel, welcome. And of course, to all of our regulars, welcome back. We always love to see you virtually. So today we're going to be talking about portrait editing. I'm going to be using Lightroom and Luminar, possibly Photoshop. We'll see how it goes, if it's needed to edit these portrait photos that have been submitted. So I've got actually way more than we could possibly do today, which is great because we'll do it again in the new year with another portrait theme. So thanks to everybody who submitted their portrait photos. So as far as this image goes right here, we are having a holiday sale over on our website. So most of our courses, presets, overlays, textures, bokehs, the whole bit, everything is 30% off until December 30th. So you have a chance to grab something for yourself or for somebody else. We actually now have gift certificates as well. But I want to get right into the portrait editing, and I will be right back in Lightroom to get started. All right, let me get myself over here. And let's see who is here today. Sheila, I've got lots of images from Sheila today. So you're going to get to pick which one you want me to do because I've got multiples from different people here. And I was telling Kelly that I've got my Christmas shopping done as well, but I pretty much shopped for myself. So I'm going to come back to larger here because I'm into these long dangly earrings lately, and I got these ones. I don't know if you can see them. They've got a hummingbird and these long, beautiful leather strands. I might cut them a little bit shorter, but I thought they went really pretty with my now gray hair. So that was my Christmas gift to myself at the market yesterday, the Indigenous market. And if you're here in Edmonton, they are doing the market 2 more days. Just go to St. Basil's Cultural Center today and tomorrow. Raymond, nice to see you. Welcome, Trish. I've got some of your images as well. Nancy, nice to see you. It's cold here as well, Deb. We're going back into the deep freeze. It's been really nice, but now we've got a dump of snow, and a bunch of people I knew were driving last night, which is crazy. Danelle, I just purchased the Lightroom class, the Photoshop class, and the Master class. Looking forward to starting them. Awesome. That's great, Danelle. So you took advantage of the sale. Perfect. And if you have other photography friends that you think might like some of these things, please share the link with them. Share the link to the page on your social media or send it to friends by email if you think that they would benefit from picking up one of our courses as well. And you can give them your experience with learning with me and tell them what you think about it. Chile, who is there from Chile? If you want to sign in on StreamYard on Facebook, then your name will show up, but let us know who you are. Yeah, I think they're some sort of a enamel, yeah, beaded, but I just fell in love with them. The color was so pretty. Holly from New Jersey. And who sent their images last minute here? Well, we'll see, Sheila. Yours are actually quite good, and I think I want to share them. Awesome, Raymond. Thanks for purchasing that. So if you want your name to show up when you're watching this on Facebook and commenting from Facebook, you have to add the StreamYard app in your apps on Facebook and log into StreamYard. I forget the whole process, right? And I have some of your images as well, AJ. All right, so I'll come back to that, Danelle, sort of towards the end of the day, but I'll give you a short. We did night photography. We're going to be doing winter. So if you want to do some snow and ice, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere like Trish, you can just do ice. So that could be get creative. Freeze something in your freezer and take a picture of it, right? There's all kinds of neat little frozen projects. So winter are frozen, and we're going to be doing urban as well. So I'd love to get some street photography, cities, things like that. So winter and urban would be our next ones. Holly says she owns it all. Yay! Now you just have to go through and do all the lessons, Holly. Trish has the Neo course. Thanks, Trish, for that awesome testimonial. So let's get editing. All right, so I've got a number of different images here, and I've got a bunch from Trish, a bunch from Sheila. Oh, I got a bunch from Sheila, and I'd like to do one of these. So she's got, is this your granddaughter? Is this your granddaughter, Sheila? This little one here. And I know you said it was a couple of years ago. So the kind of studio setup one, we could do something really nice with. There's a good exposure here, nice lighting. That's Sheila's edit. There's another one that's sort of done on a studio backdrop, so we could do those. Or if you want to have more of a challenge, we could talk about this one in terms of dealing with the background, because this is a real challenge, right? Similar to one that Holly submitted. So I might do that one of Holly's, and a self-portrait of Sheila. Okay, so does anybody have a preference as to which one we would do here? I'm kind of leaning towards this one because Sheila hasn't edited it, and it doesn't need a whole lot. So I kind of like to show you how to do this one. And you want me to do this one in Lightroom, Sheila? I probably will do, even for the Lightroom users, I've labeled your images yellow for Lightroom and blue if you're using Luminar. And if you are using Lightroom and you don't have Luminar Neo yet, I may still take it over to Luminar because of the portrait tools, right? So just be aware of that. So let's do this one. Ah, Marty. Okay. Hey, Marty, I've got one of yours from a while back. All right. So let's take this one in here and we're going to go through it. So I don't know what kind of lighting you used here. I'm guessing window light. It's not quite as sharp as it could be here. And that's probably because baby moved. It looks like her hand is sharp, but maybe her eyes are not. So that's also something that we could try to deal with in Luminar, or if you have Topaz Sharpen, we can deal with that as well. Okay, so as usual, the first thing I'm going to do is to change the color profile. And I want to show you this, Sheila, because this one is the raw file that you managed to send, right? So we've got the color matching profiles here, the camera matching here. And for white balance, we've got all the presets. When you send me something that is exported from Lightroom, like this one, for example, right? There's no camera matching anymore. And there's no, there's no presets here with the white balance, okay? So even though it may be the original file, this is your edited one, right? And even the PSD that you sent, right? It's still an exported file from Lightroom back in. So how you sent me that last one is how you want to do it, okay? And I wanted to show this to people because if you don't know how to get the raw file out of, if it's in Lightroom, okay? So if you think it's in Lightroom, okay, all you need to do, you don't have to export it. All you have to do is right-click it and choose, where are we here? Show in Finder or Windows Explorer if you're on Windows. And then it's going to pop up in your window that looks like this, your Finder window. And see, there's the NEF file. That's the file you just need to grab and upload into the form for me, okay? So you don't need to export it. You don't need to do anything to it. Just send the raw file. So that's how you find a raw file. I'm going to do a cough drop because we've got some things going around here in our city, and I want to avoid it. So far, I've stayed healthy, so knock on wood. I want to stay that way. All right. Yes, she is very sweet. And perfect colors for Christmas, right? I'm guessing maybe it was a Christmas portrait. And the benefit also of having the raw file is we have all the original metadata, right? I've got all the exposure information, the date it was taken, what mode you used, aperture priority, and so on, so that if there's any technical issues, I can help sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I can dissect it. There's a word. It's not, my brain's not working. Apparently I need more coffee, but we can kind of go through that and troubleshoot it. Right. We can troubleshoot it and figure that out. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is change the color profile. And this is where, the landscape one may come in handy. I'm going to close this just to have a bit more real estate. And I'm going to make these a little smaller. There we go. Okay, so portrait, we can hover over. It kind of flattens it, actually. So I'm just that's flat. Landscape's got a lot more punch, but it's kind of blue. Portrait, I'm not a fan of Nikon's portrait profile, to be honest. Camera standard looks a little better. Vivid, I actually don't mind vivid. Let's go with vivid. We're going to add more color, though. Right. Now, if this was a white sheet, right, we can do the color balance or the white balance on this sheet. Okay. Or if we know that the letters are white, using this color picker. So we just grab the eyedropper for white balance, and I'm going to put it on the background. Okay. So see how that just neutralized things, right? So if I put it on a different place, we'll get a different color. Okay, so you see that there's different tints in here. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Right, it's kind of pinkish over here. Right, so depending where you put it, you get a different color. So even if the sheet is white, you'll notice that the variations of tone and what's reflecting on it get picked up. Right, because when we're closer to her, see, it looks pink. Right, so if we choose here, it's picking up the red from her dress. So now we're taking the red out. So what we're doing with this eyedropper is we're telling it that wherever you click, I want that to be neutral with no color tint. So it's taking out the color. If it thinks that there's red in there because of the dress reflecting, the picture is going to be the opposite, which is cyan, or if it's got magenta, it will be green. Okay, so now she does look kind of green. Okay, so I think this was probably the closest. And also I would rather, with a portrait, I tend to err on the side of warm as opposed to cool. I'd rather have her a bit more red or yellow than blue or green, right? When your subject is blue, right, their skin tone just doesn't look so good. Okay? Her eyes look great, but her skin, not so much. So let's go somewhere in here. Right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do my usual shift, double click on the blacks and the whites. And you can see there's not much changing here, right? So your exposure was bang on. So there's nothing to change for exposure, okay? So there's the before and after. So just a little bit of color shifting, okay? Now, if we wanted to play with some of the other camera profiles or some of the artistic ones, we could take a look at those too, right? I'm actually kind of liking the modern ones lately that come with Lightroom, right? You could do something almost like, see, that one looks antique to me. I kind of like modern 7, even though it looks more antique. You could give her almost like a faded out look with one of these, or especially if you go into the vintage, okay? So then you start to get these sort of, looks like a baby photo from maybe 100 years ago, right? Or 60 years ago. There should be artistic ones up here too. Let's try those. Right, so you can get some really neat looks, right, just from choosing one of these, and I'm just hovering over. This one's kind of soft, which I like. Right, so it kind of gives it this brown tone. So I'm going to go with modern number 7. I've used that one quite a few times lately. Right. I'm going to give her a little bit more contrast. And we can do that with the contrast slider, or remember, we can do that with the tone curve. Right? So making it more of an S shape. Rob, I know you're sort of on your laptop today, so if you can access the video that I did on curves to help them out. See how that's darkening the shadows when I pull that down here? Okay, so your highlights are over here. So the histogram is the same histogram, right? Highlights are on the right. See, as I pull this up, it brightens the highlights. Down, it darkens the highlights. Okay, so brightening the highlights and darkening the shadows. Oops, I put another dot on. That's not what I wanted. gives you more contrast. Okay, so see this before and after. Now for baby photos like this, I might not go too contrasty. I want her to be a little bit softer, but I want to give it a little bit more punch. Okay. Now, another thing that I would love to be able to crop this, but the challenge is if we keep this aspect ratio, right, I want to get rid of some of the space on the left, then we're going to either lose the letters or some of her head. So I might go off aspect ratio and just come in a little bit. And I might even consider cropping into the bottom of the letters. Something like that, just so they're touching the bottom, like that. Okay, so she's still got space to look, right? So when you have a subject that's facing a direction, right? She's facing this way, you want space in front of them, right? Yes, I'm trying for basically, well, 18% gray is the tonality in terms of brightness, but when you're doing the color picker, right, you're doing color, not brightness. Okay, so it sets the color, not the brightness. Okay, so the 18% refers to brightness levels, which is the middle of the histogram. Okay, but the eyedropper is color. Okay, what happens if I click on the red dress? Well, you want to see? Let's do it. So in theory, what do you think is going to happen, AJ? Okay, so if, remember I clicked on the sheet or the white thing, if it was a little bit red, okay, what's the opposite color of red? Okay, opposite on the color wheel. So get to know your color wheel. The opposite of red is cyan, okay? Or it's kind of like that tealy kind of blue, right? You see it up here in the histogram. This is cyan right here. So if I click on this red dress, look at the thumbnail. See what happens? Eek! Not so much. Okay. So you see what I'm saying? It tries to neutralize that red. Okay? Because if we look at the red now, it's still not perfectly neutral, but it's trying to make this red gray and not red. Right? That might, Adam says, it'd be really cool if you had someone show how to use the upscale a Facebook photo. Okay, that's an interesting project, Adam. That might be something that I could try on a separate video. So thanks for that. That could be something that I make for the YouTube channel. Good idea. Because I haven't done anything on that yet because I haven't really found anything, but that's a great use for it. Or like a phone image, that you took small and you want to print or something like that. Okay. The one thing you want to be careful of upscaling a Facebook photo is please make sure that it's your photo. Please don't take other people's photos and upscale them and print them. Okay. There's copyright on people's photos. Even if they don't say that it's copyright, it's just kind of an unspoken rule that the photographer that took the image owns the copyright to that image. So please don't take images off Facebook and try and print them. Okay. That's not what the tool is for. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to lower this contrast a bit. Again, I went a little too far. Okay. Now there's not much else I would do to her. I made actually some presets with the new tools. So the new Lightroom tools came with these new masking for people. You can mask to people, skin, eyes, all these things. So I made a new one called Glamour Portrait. Actually, these are the ones that came with Lightroom. So if you have the newest Lightroom installed and you're in the presets here, let me just close this up for a minute. So if you're in the presets, right, in here, at the bottom, the ones that came with Lightroom, there's portrait, sky, and subject. Adaptive, meaning that it finds those elements automatically if you copy it or paste it onto another image, okay? So I made my own because I didn't like their Glamour Portrait one. I didn't like what it did. It made the lips really red, and I don't necessarily always want to do red. Okay, so I made a Glamour Portrait one, right? You can see by me hovering over what it's doing. It's actually brightening her and darkening the background. It's going a little too far, but let's just apply it, and then we can adjust the masks, okay? So I can take a look here. I can see, okay, the background right? And this is because I've named my mask and all the layers, so I know what's happening here. Okay, so the background is being darkened, and I don't mind that because look at how much more she stands out. Okay, we could also actually lower the texture and the clarity to blur the background a little bit and keep her sharp. Right. Now this one here, okay, so it's increasing the whites and the exposure. And I don't mind that too much. Let's just dial it back a little bit. Okay, so she still stands out. Like so. I'm going to actually add a little bit of black back in. When you brighten things, okay, especially if you use exposure and shadows, for example, okay, if you brighten things and increase the shadows, see how flat she's starting to look? Okay, you need to have those blacks. Okay, I talk about adding black all the time, and that's because you need to have black to have those rich colors. Okay, so I really like what's happening here. Right, so you can turn it on and off. Okay, on the face and body skin, I basically took their glamour sort of version and edited it myself. I'm adding contrast, minus shadows, adding whites, and then taking the texture and the clarity and the sharpness down. And that is working on her face. Okay, so if I turn the mask on, let's make it green. She's going to be a goblin here for a second. Okay, so that's the part that it's masking. It picked up a little bit of the background, but that's where this one is applying, and it's sharpening or it's smoothing her skin. Okay, can you see that? Like so. Okay. This one is whitening the eye. Right here, we're darkening the eyebrows a little bit. We could even give her a little bit more eyebrows. Baby hair is very soft. And with hair, you can add texture or you can remove texture. Okay, so you can have, and that's in the ones that come with Lightroom, you can have texture hair. Okay, so see if I hover over that, her hair is darker and had more texture versus smooth hair, which is softer. Okay, and that's the one that I use in mine because I want your eyes to go to her face, not to her hair. Okay, iris and pupil. This one is brightening her iris. It's maybe a little too much, and maybe just a too much saturation. Okay, so that's affecting her eyes. See her eyes? And then lips. This one is not really doing anything here, so I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so if we take a look at what these masks are doing, have a look. Okay. So it looks good before, okay, but now she really stands out. And now that we've brightened it, okay, I might actually darken the whole image a little bit. So what's happening is her face is just the brightest thing in the picture now, right? Right now, the brightest thing is sort of the edge of these letters, and now she really stands out. Okay. On this one, I might be tempted to add a light vignette. Okay, so that's under the effects tools. Okay. And if you go this way, you get a white vignette. You go this way, you get a dark one. Right. Now this is where I really like Luminar's vignette better because I can move it. But I'm just going to go really gentle with it. Okay, so just really soft to just soften the edges a little bit. I don't want to come into her head too much. Okay. So if you dial the feather down to 0, okay, you can see where that is going. And I might actually go this direction, get more of her head. So I'm adjusting the shape and the size. Okay. Oops. That was the wrong one. I wanted feather. There we go. Now I can take this a little farther. So see what that's doing? It's just adding a little bit of softness around the outside. Okay. So before and after. Now we could apply this same settings. Okay, so I'm going to do a copy. So Command or Control C. I'm going to check everything except cropping. I want to make sure that I have all the masks selected. And this is a big reason why to name your masks so that when you're copying and pasting to another image, you can decide, oh, well, I don't need hair in the next one or whatever. Okay. So I'm going to copy this, and then we're going to apply it to the other similar image. Okay. So I'm just going to do Command V for Victoria or vignette. Okay. Now it's gone a little bit contrasty, but we can adjust these things, right? So I can come back in here and say, well, I don't want that tone curve because it's too contrasty. And that helps. Okay. I can also adjust the background. Now, if I want the background a little bit more whiter, we can just dial the saturation down. See that? So it's got a little bit less color. Okay. Now she's got more color than the background. Okay. That's softening her skin. That's whitening the eyes. That's the eyebrows. Maybe we don't need to darken her eyebrows quite so much for a little girl. And then the iris. Okay, so this one is amazing. Look at these eyes, you guys. Look at these eyes. So that's a little too far. So I'm going to dial it back a little bit. But it's really doing an amazing job to sparkle up her eyes. See that? I think I'm going to go with shadows instead. Oops. There we go. You want to make sure you don't create devil people, and that's the key here. But you see what that's doing on the skin? Let's go back down to skin here. Okay. Now, if it's gone too far, right, I'm lowering the clarity, sharpness, and the texture. So we can always bring a little bit of clarity back or bring the sharpness back. Okay. Now she's got a lot of sort of red in her cheeks, and she's got a little scratch on her forehead here. Okay, so I want to clone this out. And she's got like a little hair over her eyebrow. So I'm going to use the cloning tool or the spot removal tool. And that's Q keyboard shortcut. Rob, if you could please share the Lightroom keyboard shortcut cheat sheet link, please. And I like to use this first one. This is a new one, and it's content aware fill. And it's great because you literally just draw over what you want to erase, and it reads the surrounding area and tries to fill it for you, right? Look at that. Amazing. I'm going to do the same with this hair, right? And I'm just moving my mouse over here so that that thing disappears. So look at that. Hair and scratch gone. Because babies scratch themselves, right? Or sometimes with their little sharp claws. Now, I don't actually mind the redness in her cheeks. And this is where the Lightroom comes into challenge here, because I can't mask the HSL tool, but you can with Luminar. Right? There's also quite a bit of noise in here, right? Because it was ISO 800. Okay, so we could definitely add some noise reduction, but I want to take this one to Luminar, right? Because we can do so much more things with this in terms of the skin adjustments, okay? But I want to show you another little trick here, right? With the background, right? And this is just doing background selection, right? Let me just delete this one and show you how to do it, okay? So I'm going to add a new mask, and I'm going to go select background, right? And there's the background selected, the part that's highlighted in green. And I can do exactly what I just did before. So I can lower the texture and the clarity. I can lower the saturation, or I can actually just shift the color, okay? So I can make the background a different color. And you can do that with the sliders here, or you can literally just go down here and choose a color, okay? So if we wanted a Christmas portrait, we could actually make her a green background, which is a little bit hokey. I kind of don't mind the blue, but ever so subtle, right? So the idea behind, you'll find a lot of portraits have blue backgrounds in the studio, and that's for a reason. It's because blue and cool colors recede, and warm colors project, right? So she's warm, she's going to project off. So we could keep it neutral, or we could do it a little more blue like this. Okay. We could even, I do a trick where I add a spotlight on the background. So let me show you this. Okay, so I'm going to call this one blue background. And this is a perfect example for this one, Sheila, which is why I wanted to do this. Okay, so if you want to make like a high key portrait and make the background white, for example. Okay, so we've made it blue, but I can always change that, right? That's the beautiful thing about this, all non-destructive editing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a radial gradient. Okay, you guys are going to want to watch this. Create a radial gradient. I'm going to move this out of the road here. And I'm going to draw it sort of in the middle. And you'll see why in a minute, so that it kind of overlaps her. And then I'm going to take the exposure way up. Right now you'll see that it's brightening her, which we don't want. Then I'm just going to go subtract subject. Okay, so now it's subtracting her. So you can see that sort of white circle in the background. So now as I move this around, see, I've got a spotlight on the background. Okay, but it's not affecting her. So I can make it bigger. And now we have sort of a high key background. I like to just call this one spotlight. Okay. So I'm going to undo the blue that I did here. Let's go back to just plain color. Okay. So it's still got a fair bit of warmth in it. If we want it more white, we can increase the exposure. Right. And what I might do is just, lower the saturation. And now we have like a really nice, what's called a high key portrait. Okay. So we got rid of any of that stuff in the background. Okay. So I know you did some work cloning and doing things like that in Photoshop, Sheila, and you don't have to do that anymore. Lightroom will do that for you. Right, so see what that's doing on the background. Let's take a before and after. Okay, so it's basically making a studio portrait out of it. Nancy says, can you do that in Luminar? Effectively, yes. And I'm going to do one of Holly's that way. So yes, great question. Blows your mind. Well, I'm glad, AJ. I'm sorry to blow your mind up, but I'm sorry, not sorry. How's that? Got to do more editing. You're amazing. Thank you, Sheila. Well, you sent me some amazing photos. And how could I not edit this cute face, you guys? Like, seriously. Merry Christmas to you. Also, Brandon, going to Niagara on the Lake. Nice. That's a beautiful, beautiful area in Eastern Canada. So I expect to see some beautiful photos, Brandon. For winter photos coming up. If you missed the beginning, submit winter photos. That's what I'm looking for, Brandon. So if you're at the falls and the falls is frozen, I'd love to see Niagara Falls frozen. Doesn't happen very often, but it should be a lot of ice anyways. Okay. My preset added back in the reddish tone to her cheeks. Yeah, see, I don't mind it because, babies have that sort of tone there, right? But if we want to take this one into Luminar, that's when I could lower the saturation of the red and get rid of that. Okay, so I want to move on to the next image, but if you want to work on this one in Luminar, Sheila, take this one to Luminar. You can do it from here as a plugin, and then using the color tool, lower the saturation of red, lower or brighten the red, and then just mask it into her face. Okay. So paint it into her face because you don't want to lower the saturation of her dress or her lips. So just paint it into her little cheeks, and then that will take away a lot of the redness. Okay. Oops. All right, let's go to the next one. Now I've got several from AJ and several from Holly. Now, this one here, you wanted to know if I could do the same thing with the background spotlight in Luminar. So I want to do one of these studio ones, Holly. Okay. Let me just hop over here for a second because Rob is giving me a note. So I just want to remind you of what is on sale. And I also want to tell you about a special item that I have to give away. So we actually have a bundle from Luminar that is related to portraits. There's portrait presets and some overlays and things that are bundled. It's a $49 US value. And I have 3 from Skylum to give away. But since it's portrait related and Luminar related, we've created this special bundle here. So if you don't have our portrait course or our Neo course and you buy this bundle, right? If you already have one or the other, let me know and we'll enter you into that course as well. If you buy the other one, okay? So if you already have Luminar and you buy the portrait course, we'll enter you into that as well. But if you buy this bundle, you'll be entered to win one of those Skylum packages, right? Worth an extra $49. And our portrait course has now been split into 3 options. So you can buy the whole course, right? And we've lowered the price. So it used to be $197 and now it's $99, on sale for $68. So that's like the lowest price that you can get the entire course for. And you can also choose to get either just the flash portion or just the natural light portion. So if you just want to learn about flash, get that one. If you just want to learn about natural light and you don't want to deal with flash, get that one. So we've broken it up into a few options for you now. Danelle says she already has both. Well, you know what we'll do, Danelle, is we'll go through our list of customers and whoever has both, we'll put you all into the draw. Okay, so if you only own one of those 2 courses and you buy the other one, then you'll be good to go and we'll enter everybody that has both into a draw. So I'll put that into the email. I mentioned that in the email yesterday that I sent out about the sale. Okay, so thanks for that, Danelle. Okay, so let's get back over here. Okay, so Holly said that these were images that she took at a workshop, that the guy had set up the lighting and everything, and then she photographed. So of course, I mean, the lighting is amazing. And is Holly here? I think she is. And what she said was she didn't learn anything because he had done it for her, right? Done it for the students, right? So if you want to learn how to do lighting like this, we talk about this to some degree in the course. This is more studio lighting, but you can absolutely do this with your speed lights if you have a couple of speed lights, right? So I'm guessing this was probably 2 lights here, maybe a reflector. Okay, so you can actually see, and this is kind of a little trick that I teach my portrait students, that if you look at the catch lights where the light is in the eye, you see this? You can tell what kind of light they used, right? Now I'm zoomed into 200, 300% there. Can you see it's sort of an octagon shape? So I'm guessing it's either an octabox, which is like an octagon softbox, or a big giant umbrella, okay? From the shadow and how soft the shadow is, it's probably a medium-sized box, maybe 40 inches. And then there's another light behind her lighting up her hair with a gel on it, okay? So a colored filter to color that, okay? And probably a reflector on the shadows here, okay? Rob says he was guessing what Sheila had used there. And that's why I was guessing window light, because the catch lights were bigger. It looked like more of a window. Yep. So it's a giveaway. So start to study photos. If you're into portrait photography, okay, study the eyes and the portrait photos and like look at the direction of light, the quality of light. That's all things that I talk about in the class. Maybe share the free lesson for them on the portrait course, Rob, if people want to watch that one. Lesson 7, I talk about lighting patterns. And this one here is what's called loop lighting. So the question was, can we do the background light or that spotlight in Luminar? Let's try. So Holly uses Luminar. So I'm actually going to take this raw file over to Luminar Neo. Where's my Luminar Neo? There it is. Okay, so if you want to take your raw file from Lightroom, meaning you haven't done any edits, right? You go export open source files instead of edit in. Okay, so if you go edit in and then choose Neo, it will create a new TIFF, apply the Lightroom edits, and then open that, but you won't have access to the raw data. So I'm going to do open source files. Sheila's talking about herself in the third person. Okay, so here we go. You guys can chat about courses and things in the chat while I work on this. Now, I've got a lot of different presets, and I'm actually going to be making a preset pack for portraits for Luminar. I'm probably going to be making a few because now with Luminar, they've given me a way to what's called pack them, so I can create them into like a package that you can purchase and add to your Luminar. Okay, so I am going to be making some presets for Luminar, but I don't want to start with a preset. I want to just show you how I would edit this and what tools I would use. Okay, so the first thing is always develop raw. Okay, and I'm looking at the histogram. We've got camera profiles, just as we looked at in Lightroom, right? And we don't get a preview here, but I'm going to try camera. See, I'm not a fan of portrait profiles on most cameras, to be honest. This one's pretty red. Is that more like her natural skin tone? Oh, neutral looks pretty good. That looks a little better. Neutral looks pretty good. Yeah, see, Adobe Standard is flat. That looks red. That looks flat. I'm going to go with neutral. Okay, so see how it added a bit of punch without making her skin red? Okay, then I want to fix this histogram because this is underexposed. So if this guy set up the lights for you and gave you the camera settings as to how to expose, this is a stop underexposed. So he didn't give you the correct, or he or she, your instructor, didn't give you the correct settings for this. Okay, so this should have been exposed more. Right, now I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to use curves to do that. Okay. When you look at the histogram, you can see that it's the same arrangement. Okay, it's telling me that the information ends here, but white is over here. So there's no white. So what I want to do is bring this point in to meet the graph. See, they start moving towards each other. And I'm going to turn on the clipping warnings. Okay, so clipping warnings, blue means black is clipping. But of course, we don't see any white clipping, which is a red highlight. If I keep going, I should get some white clipping. Yeah, see now, somewhere in there, I'm starting to get the highlight on her lip clipping. But look at the difference, okay? All I did was a white slider, okay? That's too dark. That's closer to the correct exposure. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to balance it with a little bit of exposure, okay? And possibly a little more white. I'm looking at this histogram as well. Okay, so it's spreading out. You see, there's a tiny bit of clipping on her lip now. That's the highlight. So the highlight is clipping. I'm okay with that, okay? Because that's what's called a specular highlight. She's got that lip gloss, okay? I'm okay with that clipping. Okay, so fixing the exposure, look at how much I dialed the exposure. Hardly any. Because remember, exposure is midtones, okay? And I might balance it a little bit more by bringing this up a little farther and then bringing this back down. Okay, so I brought the whites up high, but now I'm gonna balance it out a bit better. There we go. Okay, so by bringing the exposure up, I'm bringing the midtones, okay, which is a little bit less contrasty. There we go. And now we see the histogram is way more spread out. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of black clipping. We do already, so I don't know if I want to give her any more. I might go a little bit more just for some contrast and then just bring it back with the shadows. Okay, so see how it's that dance again? Remember, we're dancing. So black's down, shadows up, and I'm watching the amount of clipping and I'm watching the image itself. Okay, and once again, I'm going to bring the whites back a little bit because it was starting to clip on her nose. Okay, so I'm always checking the clippings and overall exposure. So that was the original. Can you see how dark it is now? Okay, definitely underexposed. Okay, but because I'm using the combination of the whites down here on the curves, it didn't have to push the exposure that far. Okay, I want to just show you something here. I want to remember where this is, but let me turn this curve back to where it was. Right? If I don't do anything with the curve, I have to go a lot farther with the exposure to bring this up. My cat wants to sit with me. Okay? And then it sort of loses her contrast. Okay? So I like to find a balance between bringing the exposure up and punching the whites up. There we go. Let's get back to where I was here. Somewhere in there. Okay, so now she's still got nice contrast. Okay, now the background itself is kind of blah. It's just black. I'm guessing it's a black background with no light on it. My guess is actually, tell me if I'm right, Holly, it's a gray background. I bet you it's a gray background, but because you don't put any light on it, it shows up as almost black. Right? So what they've done here, or what the instructor did, was he put what's called a rim light on her hair. Right? He put a rim light on her hair to light up her hair. Okay. Aha, see? I was right. A gray lumpy wall. So see how much I can gather in terms of information just by looking at this? Right? AJ's asking, was the underexposure intentional? I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't suggest underexposing on purpose, because you can make dark and moody and still have a correct exposure, okay? Because we can make this dark and moody. We're not done yet, right? We can give her more shadows and we can do all kinds of stuff. But I wouldn't underexpose it, because then you just don't have the information in the file. When you underexpose and push the exposure up, you're going to get more grain, okay? If I go back to Lightroom, I can see the settings easier. Let's take a look here. So ISO 200, right? 1/200th of a second, because it's flash. So that's a flash sync, and F5. So it probably should have been shot at about F4, okay? And then you would get all that more detail, because we shouldn't see grain at ISO 200, but I'm going to guess that we will at some point. The background is actually looking a bit grainy. Okay, but now let's deal with the thing that you wanted about, asked about making the light. Okay, so this is the first part. Now this is one where I would use a preset. I've got a cat walking all over my desk. She wants lunch. You're gonna have to wait, Munch. So I'm gonna go to the portrait tools next. Okay, so I do develop raw, and there comes the cat over here. And then I'm going to go down to the portrait tools. So I'm going to do face first. So face AI. And I'm going to do face light. I'm going to come back to face light later. Okay. She doesn't need to slim her face. Obviously, she's a beautiful slim model. Okay. Eyes. Okay. She has blue eyes. But do you see how big her pupils are? Okay. So when you're in a studio environment like this and it's dark, often the pupils are big like that because she can't, her eyes need to bring in more light, right? So if the guy's modeling lamps were low, so modeling lamp is the light that's on the flash before it flashes, then you'll get these big irises like this. Okay, so one of the benefits of this tool is that I can see that she has blue eyes, or possibly even we could try gray, is I can choose blue, and you see what it does? It actually made her pupils smaller, right? So we can give her strong blue eyes, or I might go with gray. Actually, it seems to fit her eyes a little better. And then I usually dial the visibility down. I find that it brightens too much. Okay. So let's just see what that's doing. See how that's picking up a bit more there? She's got a little bit of redness in her eyes. We can improve. She doesn't have dark circles on her eyes at all. We can darken her eyebrows. Again, she's got makeup, so she doesn't need that. And I don't think she needs anything on her mouth either. We can whiten her teeth a little bit. And if we wanted to darken her lips without adding redness, we can do that. Or we can give them a bit more color as well. So she's kind of got kind of a nude lip gloss, right? She was taking the smoke. You guys are funny. The photo shoot was a frenzy. 15 people sharing remote triggers, and the flash power didn't always work. There you go. So firing too quickly, probably before the flash is recycled, that's going to be possible. Shame on you, Sheila. I'm not going to put that one on the screen, but it's funny. Okay, so let's see what this one is doing. So far, oops, I got to get back over here. Okay, so we're brightening her up. She's got beautiful skin for the most part. We don't need to do a lot here, but I'm going to go to Skin AI. And I'm going to drag the amount or just click the amount up to about 48. But I want to take it all the way because I want to show you how great this skin softening is. And if she has any imperfections in her skin, like any bumps or blemishes, there's a few up here. Just clicking this here will often get rid of them. Yeah, she doesn't really have any, but I want to come zoom in even farther because I want you to see how well this is working. Okay, so see how it's softening without removing the actual texture of her skin. And this is at maximum amount. I have used other portrait automated skin softening tools, and they make a smooth Barbie doll plastic person looking mess, right? This one does a really, really great job. Okay, so I really love what it does. If we want to remove some shine, okay, so there's a little bit of shine there, right? That will tone it down. And what it does is it just sort of adds that same flesh color back into those areas. See that? Watch this forehead part here. Okay, so before, see how it's toning that down, that shiny part? So it's like matte powder, okay? Here's a little trick. Can you guys see there's like a bump on her nose there? See how she's got like a little imperfection in her nose? Okay. Usually people, this is from the course actually, and I teach this in the portrait course. Usually people that have a bump on their nose, it's on one side, not the other. Okay. So she's being lit from this direction. I bet if the light was on the other side, this bump doesn't show up. Okay, so that's about analyzing people's faces and learning to understand those things, and that's something that I've learned over 35 years of experience. Okay. Make sure they don't see this episode. Well, I don't know their name, so that's fine. You don't understand how to use a light meter. Yeah, and that's kind of why I teach really beginner, right? So I assume that in the course, people know nothing about portrait photography, about lighting, about nothing, right? So everything in there goes over all that stuff. So you have all these things. Do you have the portrait course as well, Holly? I know you've got the editing ones. Okay, so let's continue with this one. I don't think she needs body AI. Definitely she does not need body AI, okay? But what we are going to do is if we want to try and deal with this spot, so there's a little white spot here. Sometimes models will wear makeup that has like things that pick up sparkles in them. And I don't know, it doesn't work for me in photography. So I'm just going to see there's that little spot right there. So I'm just going to use the erase tool. And there's also a little spot down here. Once that one is erased, I just want to get these little spots. Okay. Right here. I want to get that one on her lip. Yeah, see, I didn't get that one so good. So I'll just restore that one. I have to come in a little closer. So when you're doing something like this, okay, so if the erase tool doesn't do a good job, zoom in farther and use a smaller brush. See how that worked better? Right? And she's got like a tiny little sort of divot in her skin. Like we're really splitting hairs. Stuff like this too, like where she's got sort of this bright area in her eye here, right? If their eye looks weepy, you can even either clone that out or just soften it. So all these little white dots on her forehead, I think the program didn't pick them up because they're not really blemishes. They're just sort of, I don't know, bumps, right? So I'm just going to use the erase tool and see if we can smooth that out a little further. There we go. Oops, I wanted to erase again. We'll go back to erase because what I want to do is I want to see if I can get this bump smoothed out. So I'm literally just going to draw there and I want to see if it fills it in. I've got my fingers crossed here because I don't know what's going to happen. Well, that's not perfect. Definitely not what I wanted. I'm hoping that it would fill in here, but we can use the clone tool. Okay, I'll show you how to use the clone tool to do that. Okay, so the clone tool got added back in here. I'm going to lower the strength. I'm going to lower the size. Okay, so I'm only going to do about 20% opacity, and I'm going to click here to start. And then I'm just going to paint straight up because I want to just sort of fill that little divot in with the darker color. And it takes a minute for the first clone to apply and come back as well. I think she's a model, Sheila, from the course that she did. So I don't know if, can you see what that's doing? See how it's really subtle? So if I choose another spot here, and I'm literally just sort of painting up a little bit and painting that in. Can you see that? See that? And I can do the same here if I wanted to just darken this, just so it's not taking so much attention. Okay? So these are little details of things that portrait photographers and glamour fashion photographers do. Okay. Okay, now we're going to do the portrait bokeh, which will help us work on the background. Okay, because the portrait bokeh blurs the background, which we don't need to do here, but in doing so, we can actually use it to tame some of the flyaway hair. Okay, so let me show you this. So let it do its thing to mask the portrait. And so as soon as you drag the amount up, I'm just going to make sure that it's got all of her focused. Okay. And then what I do is I bring the strength down, but I can choose to defocus these outer parts here. Okay, so I'm still painting at 100% strength. I'm going to tell it that this is part of the background. Okay, because I want these hairs to blur so much that they disappear. And I'm going to change the depth correction to 0, which will bring the blur even farther. Right? So let me see if I can do that again. See, look, we actually created bokeh with her hair now, which is interesting. See, now we got a bokeh over here. Okay, so there's bokeh all the way here now, so I can just come closer. I might not be able to do all of this hair, but she's kind of got this like glow around her now, which is interesting. Not what I intended, but I'm going to go with 50% now, and I'm refocusing. And I usually do this. So I get a big brush with a big softness, so you can see the two circles. And what I do is I put the inner circle at the edge of her head and just paint around the edge like this. Right? So then it will pick up a little bit of the background to focus it, right? Like so. Something like that. And I may have to do some work with the erase tool to solve that. Or we could say, hey, you know what? That's kind of interesting. Let's just leave a bokeh there. That looks a little better. I still got this bokeh here around her head. And I may not be able to do a full-on fix of this hair. Let's do a little bit less. See how it looks. So you have to back out and then get off there. So let's see what it's doing. You see the hairs at the top of her head? Look at the top. See how it's kind of cleaning that up? And I don't mind the sort of bokeh around her. I don't mind that at all. So I'm just going to fix this one because I think it's going too far. There we go. Okay, so see what that's doing. Now we can either darken the background or brighten it. Okay, but let's darken it. We could change the color here like we did in Lightroom. Don't have as many color choices, but we could definitely go blue or yellow. Okay, so we can warm it up or cool it down. Okay. If you want to change the color of the background, you can, but it's just a little bit different process. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm still getting a bit of a glow sort of here, so I'm going to fix that a little bit here. A little too much glow. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, okay, I made a mess now. I made a mess. Okay, that's better. So now I've applied that. Okay. Now the masking tools in Luminar are not quite as powerful as the new ones in Lightroom, but they're good. Okay. So if we want to do the same kind of circle on the background, like a spotlight, we're going to go into the develop tool. We're going to create a whole brightness thing. Okay. And I'm doing that with increasing the exposure, okay, and the whites. Then I'm going to do a mask. And I'm going to do a radial mask. Actually, I'm going to do the subject. Let's see how this works. Because you want to do sort of two selections here. I want to deselect the subject or select the background, right? Highlight at her elbow. That's her finger. I think that's her finger. Holly says she's a Monster Energy drink model. Yeah, clearly she's a model because she's gorgeous. Okay, so now I can choose human, okay? So what it's going to do is it's going to apply that effect to the human only, and then we'll just invert it, okay? So see how it selected her, okay? Then we just invert it, okay? So now we've got the background brightened, but we want to just have it in the center, okay? Now I don't know if I do radial gradient now, if it's going to give me a circle. Okay, so let's try it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's working or not. See, it's not giving me the background. We might have to paint it in. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to undo that step. So there are undos here and there in Luminar. So I did a Command Z or Z. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a really big brush and erase it from the outside. Okay, so I'm going to start at the corners. I'm just going to go like around like that. See that? And that was at 100%. Okay, so I did that one at 100%. And there's our spotlight. See that? So basically what I did was I did select human, inverted it so it was just the background, and then erased it from where else I didn't want it. Okay. So there we have. Now my finishing touches on portraits, I almost always use the glow tool, and I use Orton Effect is one of my favorites. It gives a lot more sort of contrast, and you have to lower the brightness when you use this one. It adds a lot of contrast. So this one I don't want to add more contrast, but it does a really nice job of further softening. Okay. And there's one more step I wanted to show you with the face light. And it's not perfect here. I didn't get the spotlight in her hair. I would do a little bit more work to get some light through the hair as well. Right? And I might do some cloning to sort of fix this. The hair here is the kind of detail that I look for in the camera. Like I would push her hair back or reposition her hand. And I understand you were in a time limited situation, right? Okay, so I usually do Orton Effect. We could try Orton Effect Soft. See, that one doesn't give the same contrast, so I need to increase the contrast with Orton Effect Soft. Okay, but it's not shifting the exposure. Notice my brightness is way down as well, right? So the last step that I didn't do with the portrait tools that I want to show you is the face light. Okay, so you come back to Face AI, and I'm going to put face light up to about 30. Okay, maybe let's go a little farther so you can really see what it's doing. Let's go 40. Okay, so now her face is way too bright. Okay, so I'm doing this on purpose. Then I'm going to go to Develop and lower the brightness or the exposure of the entire image. And I'm paying attention to her face. So I want to bring it down enough so that her face is the correct density. Okay, and I want to show you what that did. Okay, so what that does is it creates a custom vignette basically around her face. Right, so if I go back 2 steps, okay, to glow, okay, take a look at her body. Take a look at the brightness of the skin on the body compared to the face now, compared to now. Okay, so see how her body is equal tone, right? Now her body is darker and her face is brighter. So again, bringing the eyes up to the face. And I could take that even farther, okay? So if I want to go farther, I'll just darken until I get the body to where I want it, and then go back one step and just increase this a little bit, okay? So I'm kind of guessing here, but, right? See, the more I increase face light, the more that I can darken everything else, okay? And then we could add a vignette here as well if we wanted to. So those are kind of my steps in a portrait, especially like this, okay? And if I'm working with Lightroom, which I do, I'm going to apply this and bring it back to Lightroom. If I'm working with Lightroom as my primary, which I do, I would take this image to Photoshop as a Photoshop smart object, okay? And apply Luminar there. And then any editing that I need to do that's more advanced, I would do that in Photoshop. Things like major cloning, removal of stuff, things like that, okay? Good question, Trish. Yeah, they recently added a few things in about undo. I know that there's an undo on the clone tool now, which is kind of important. But they didn't tell us. They didn't tell me either. You know, people are finding it by accident. Well, you know, now try Control Z because it is there in some places, or check that menu, the edit menu, because sometimes it's there now. Okay. Holly said she was a total spaz interacting with the model. Yeah, it's when you're in a setting like that, I mean, you have to perform really quickly, and I totally get it. Yeah. 15 is also a lot for a workshop. Like maximum I used to take in my classes was 12. On my workshops that I do in Alberta, the maximum is 8 because then I can have smaller groups. And even then, sometimes we split into halves. So we're only having 4 people doing one thing at a time. Yeah, 15 is a lot. So I've kind of done some weird things with her hair here. So I would have, like I said, done a bit better job having spent more time on this. But there's the original, okay? And there's our new Lightroom version. Okay, so you can do the backlight. There you go. All right, AJ, I want to do one of yours. And you sent me a few. So which one you want to do? I know you said one was your favorite. Is it the baseball guy? Or do you want to do one from the beach? Because these would be great as well. So I did not see your question. I'm looking at it now. I did. I commented on that, Rob. Maybe you were feeding the cats. I said, I think it's just her hand. I'll go back to that in a minute. So if AJ is still here, which image do you want to do? Or you guys tell me which one. Do you want me to do the baseball player on the left or one of the guys on the beach? Either of these ones on the beach could be really cool because we could do some really neat things with the sky on this one and brighten them up, right? And they're very kind of flat, right? So if we look at the histogram, see it's all kind of pushed together because it looks like it was probably a hazy day sort of thing. So we can give them a whole bunch more contrast. The baseball is a JPEG. Yeah, that's fine. Holly says standing on the beach. Vertical on the beach. That's 2 verticals on the beach. Okay, so lots of people are saying beach. Okay, I'm going to the beach. And just for Rob's benefit, do you mean this highlight right here, Rob? It's her hand. So it's her hand just picking up, it's picking up the backlight. So this light that's lighting up her hair is picking up her hand as well. Right there. See that? Because it's got red on it. So, all right, going to the beach. Here we go. So this one is a raw file. This is an icon. And you are Lightroom. Okay, so we're doing Lightroom. Okay, so same steps. Camera profile. Let's take a look. Okay, so landscape. Look what happens with landscape. So landscape profiles. I need to change my size. There we go. Landscape profiles enhance the blue and the green. So look what happens if I choose landscape, okay? And looking through some of the others, I'm going to go with the landscape Vivid looks good too, but I want to bring the exposure and the colors up myself. Okay. These are your sons. Oh, cool. All right, so let's make them look good. Then we're going to do the shift. Okay, so hold the shift key, double click the word whites, double click the word blacks. Okay, now their faces are dark, right? So we're going to do I don't want to do a glamour portrait on them because you don't want to do that with guys. Okay, but I have another one that I created called Light Subject, Darken Background. Okay, now as you can see, that's going too far, but again, it's just a quick preset. So I'm going to show you how to make this one, okay? Because all that's in here is two things, okay? So you just need to mask. I'm going to give them a little bit of clarity before we start. And I don't usually go past about 15 for portraits, okay? So to create that preset that I just showed you, when I hovered over, you create a mask and you choose select subject, which it does very quickly, okay? And I'm going to boost the exposure on them a little bit. So remember what I said, when you boost the exposure, things can go too flat and they start to look cut out. So you have to be careful. Usually what I'll do is I'll bring exposure up a little bit, white up a little bit, which keeps that contrast, and blacks down. Okay. So can you see what that's doing? Oh, our mask is over here. See how that's brightening them, but we're not losing the contrast. Okay. Then we're going to rename it. I'm just going to call it the guys. And we're going to do another one and select the background. Okay. Now with this one, I'm going to add black. But I'm also going to do dehaze because it's really hazy back there in the sky. Look what happens. Look at it. Crazy. Look at that. Hey. I could also shift the color a bit if I want to give it a bit more warmth, right? See how the sand is warming up? I might do that overall though, because I think they're a little bit cool, right? We could also lower the highlights. But see how this dehaze is picking up so much color, right? It will do the same thing basically if I add a bunch of black. Well, not as well. Dehaze does a really nice job here. Okay, so I'm just going to take that there. The blues might be getting a little bit crazy, but we'll come back to color and fix that, okay? And when I adjust the white balance, that might be shifted as well. I want to make sure I have some black in there, right? J key shows the clippings, right? His shirt is clipping a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about it right now. And let's call this background. I wish that it would actually rename the masks when you create one. Like if you create one using the select background, I wish it would just call it background mask, right? So you didn't have to do that. So I've got cat hair all over my face. But look what's happening so far, right? All I've done is a couple of things, right? Now I'm going to change the white balance, okay? Because it's a raw file, I'm going to try daylight. And that one I find is good, but it adds a lot of magenta. And it's maybe shady. Let's try cloudy or shade. Okay, so cloudy and shade will warm up your pictures. Okay, so you can definitely see it's warmer. Let's zoom in on them a little bit more. They look a little pink. So I'm going to dial the magenta down a bit. Like that. Right? I almost want to do a little bit of dehaze on them as well. Like it seems like there's just an overall haze to the picture. And let's bring the shadows up a tiny bit. You know what? I'm going to come back and do that on them. Okay, so I'm going to bring the shadows up because his pants are kind of getting too dark. And let's do dehaze. So dehaze, I'm seeing sort of this haziness around his hair. Right, so I could do dehaze on the whole picture or the whole guys, but I'm going to keep it really gentle because the pants get too dark. Okay, so instead, I'm going to do another mask. I'm going to add another mask, and I'm going to select people, but I'm just going to select their hair. I got cats hissing now. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm selecting hair. And creating the mask. And now I'm just going to do dehaze on the hair. See that? So these masks are amazing. Now notice it did not select his facial hair. So it selected his top of his head, but not his facial hair. So just that little subtle change. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little better. Okay, so watch as I turn this mask off. Can you see how his hair, it looks kind of hazy? Look at the difference. Okay. And I'm going to go and correct the blues, right? Because the blues have gone a little wacky for me. So that's the saturation. I might even shift the color a little bit. I've also got some presets that I did years ago. These are in my regular Lightroom presets for skin. And these are some things that I created to shift skin tones, and they still work really well. It would work even better. Well, again, this comes back to my pet peeve with Lightroom is you can't use the HSL tool and mask it, right? That's my pet peeve. Okay, so I have a general enhance, right? If I click it, right, see what happens? It's saturating red, orange, and yellow, and brightening red, orange, and yellow, which is generally skin tones. You see what it's doing? It's affecting the sand as well. But if I zoom in, you see what it's doing? It's just giving them a bit more color. And if somebody has, for example, sunburn, okay, you can shift that by changing the red tones more towards orange. See how that's more red? Look at his shirt, right? So if his shirt is sunburn, this way is less sunburn, okay? So sometimes I'll go like 1 or 2 with the red and the yellow just to give somebody a more suntan look as opposed to like pink and sort of that tone. So now his shirt's more sort of corally. The other thing I'm going to do is the saturation on the blue. See that? Okay, the blue's going a little crazy, but I might shift the blue. Let's go, a little more this way. And then we can darken the blue even more. And then bring the saturation down. Because what happens is your blues get too crazy. Okay, so the blue being oversaturated is a giveaway that you've done some major editing. Okay, so let's take a look at the before and after. Okay, the final thing I would do on here is probably just an edge vignette. And I've got some presets for that. Rob, if you want to share a link to our presets, are they on the sale? I think they're on the sale, right? You can pick up our Lightroom presets on sale for, I'm going to tell you, maybe they're not. Actually, they should be. Maybe can you add them to the sale, please, Rob? I think we missed that. Okay, where's streaming? So now I'm just going to add a little edge vignette. Okay, so my trick, get the size and the shape that I want. And if you want a custom one in Lightroom, all you have to do is just do a radial filter instead, a radial mask. Right, something like that. I still feel like the color of the blue is a little bit wonky. And I got cats going crazy. There we go. That's a little better. And I'm just playing with the color. And if I warm them up, that looks way better. And it brings the blue down. So if I warm the whole picture up, okay, now, because these images are so similar and I haven't cropped it, I'm going to do select all. Okay. Usually you want to avoid copying and pasting, healing and cropping, because your cropping is going to be individual to each image, and cloning and stuff is also individual to each image. Okay. Then let's paste it to this one. And we should, fingers crossed, should be pretty close. Look at that. AJ brings up a great question. Where's your question? Oops, missed the wrong question. Why is the camera out of picture so washed out? Is there anything else I can do to improve it? Yes, you could use off-camera flash for one thing. It's flat because the light is very soft and there's probably a haze in the air. So there's nothing that you can do in camera. But if you did add a flash to them, essentially what I did in Lightroom, if you had a flash on them, I'll show you another example where I added a flash to the portrait. subject and did exactly that same thing. But look what happened with the copy and paste. Okay, so even though it's the same location, it's a completely different image, the same sort of tools applied. Okay, what I might do here is just dial back the background, the dehaze, because I don't think we need dehaze so much on this one. That's better. See, that's making the grass too dark. Dial that back. There we go. And then I might darken the vignette a little bit more. See, now I could go a little farther with this vignette. Get it darkened the way I want it. All right, so before and after. Okay, so the only way you can fix that or add more contrast in camera is to use a flash, okay? Because the flash will light them and give them a bit of more direction of light. But honestly, like, these are great because the lighting on them is soft, right? I love the sunglasses. Like, these photos are a lot of fun. They they're posing for dad. It looks great. Rob says that he is updating that right now, and he's going to put it in the chat. I'm guessing the chat for the presets is there. The link for the presets is in the chat, and we will get it updated on sale right away. So just refresh the page. Can I match the bearded sunglasses to the others? Like, darken them? Let's find out. Good question. These are great questions. We're doing all kinds of creative stuff here. So, yeah, he's got those kind of reflective glasses, doesn't he? Yes, let's give it a try. Okay, so we're back to the masking tools. Now, this time, when I do add, I'm going to do objects. Okay, so when you do objects, you can use a brush. That's too big. Or you can use a square. And basically what you do is you draw over the thing that you want to select, and Lightroom finds the edge for you. So I'm going to try just doing this and see what it selects. Look at that. Okay, so it flipped to the edge of the glasses. Now I can darken them. And voila. Look at that. There we go. So the answer to that is yes. There we go. All right, so those are great. All right, let's see the difference in terms of contrast. Great portraits. All right, let's see if we can do one more. I've got some of Trish's here, and I've got some of Karen's. Is Karen here today? Do we see Karen? Sheila wants to know, do you edit every day? You seem to have a gut instinct. I hope my guts don't stink. I make it look easy. I know I don't get the results like yours. I don't necessarily edit every day, Sheila, but considering the amount of time that I've spent editing. Now, consider I've only been digital since 2004, right? Which I know is still a long time, but I've been using Photoshop since 1996 because even back then I was scanning my negatives and doing some editing with them, right? So now Nancy's mind is blown as well. Tell me in the chat, what is blowing your mind? What thing that you saw me do today blew your mind wide open? Right? Was it the background spotlight? Was it, what did I just do? Oh, the copy and paste thing, changing the guys on the beach. What blew your mind? Tell me. I'd love to know. Let's see. Is Karen here? I know Trish was here. Are you still here, Trish? Trish was here. I don't see Karen. I'm just looking in the chat. So I want to do image for somebody that's here. So Trish sent these two. I think Marty's here as well. So if your image was not done today, we're going to hang on to it because these are great. All right. So which of these images would you guys like to see processed? They both have different challenges, right? This one here on the right has this really bright background. Okay. So do you want to know how I would handle that? This one here has a busy background and the subjects are dark. Would you like to know how I handle that? getting the sunglasses to look like the others. But it wasn't difficult, was it, Deb? I just did select object, darken. And you know what? Honestly, prior to these new masks in Lightroom, I would have had to take that to Photoshop to do that. That's how good the new masks are. So if you haven't got Lightroom version 12, get it. The intuitive analysis that you apply, it's like you know where you're going. I do have an instinctive where I'm going to go, Raymond, because I want to bring out the subject. So the goal is always, especially with a portrait, bring out the subject, bring out the face, minimize everything else. Right? That's the goal. So all of the things that I'm doing are to do that. Right? Your ability to quickly analyze the photo and know what to do immediately. Well, I cheated a little bit, Janelle. I was looking at them before. so there you go. You can feel a little better. I cheated a little bit. Everyone is saying the right one with the bright background. Okay, so let's do that. Because Holly had one that is similar, like this one here. So let's do oops, where are we? Let's do this one and see if we can copy and paste. Oh, so I didn't tell you guys how to do the save on the preset. So let me go back here for a second. When we did the guys on the beach, okay, and I applied these two things, right? Let me do it on the other one because I think they don't need their hair on this one done. So I'm going to remove hair. Yeah, see, and I wouldn't want to have the eyeglasses in there either. Yeah, see, it actually is doing something good on his hair. So I would just have the preset saved with the background and the guys. So to save a preset, you want to click plus, create preset, okay, decide where you're going to save it. Oh yeah, and then you can choose what you want to save. And in this case, all I wanted was the subject and the background. Those two masks, that's it. So anything else that's going on in the picture will stay as it is. And this is the great thing about Lightroom presets. Like Luminar ones overwrite everything. But with Lightroom, you can say, I want to leave everything else the way it is and just do these two masks. Then if you already have masks on an image, for example, it will ask you, do you want to blend them together, meaning keep the masks you already have and add these to it, or do you want to replace it with these new ones? Okay, so then all you have to do is give it a name and save it. I just wanted to make sure that I covered that. Okay, let's do our usual. And this is a DNG, a Fuji file. Okay, so I like Astia for Fuji or Provia. Those are kind of my favorites. Let's go with Astia. Okay, now I know, and you want this one done in Luminar. You know what? Let's do this both ways because this is a challenging one. And I know Holly's using Luminar as well. So let's do this. Let's take this one to Luminar. Okay. So we're going to open the raw file because then we have more information. Right? My earrings are actually longer than my hair. And my cat tried to attack my earrings earlier, so I'm going to be careful. Okay, so we're going to start with develop raw. I'm not going to do stuff like pull the highlights all the way down because that does work really great on the background, but it flattens them out. Okay, so when you do edits that are like this, that are global, it affects the entire picture. So really take those things into consideration. Okay. Yeah, see, my Fuji profiles don't show up here as well. We just get Adobe Standard, and I don't know why they don't show up for the X cameras. Something I'm going to have to ask Skylam, because I'd love to be able to get the Astia profile here. So I'm going to give it a bit more contrast. So I'm looking at them, okay? So I want to give them a bit more contrast. I want to brighten them, right? And we're going to be able to deal with some of this by doing develop again, okay? I'm going to bring the highlights down part way, but again, I don't want to flatten them too much, right? Actually, I changed my mind. This is camera raw, so I want to keep it on everything, okay? Yes, the background is blowing out, but I'm not worried about it at this point. Okay? I want to make sure I get them where I want them. So definitely brightened, definitely more exposure. And see how they're getting flat now? So we need black back. There we go. So now see, they still have contrast. Okay. If I bring the highlights all the way down, they get flat. Somewhere in there. Okay. They're also, color is not the best. So let's see if her, I haven't been able to get this eyedropper to work. Oh, good. It works again. So with the latest update, our eyedropper is fixed because it wasn't working. Okay. So I tried it on her shirt here to see if it was white. And I got something that was a bit more yellow than I would like, but let's just give them a little bit less yellow and maybe 1 or 2 magenta. Okay. So I'm looking at them specifically. Okay. This one actually might be a candidate for removing the background, because not only is this happening, but this tent thing, right? And it's not like it's like a traditional Berber tent that adds, something to their what they're wearing. Is this, where did you take this one, Trish? It looks like maybe they're like Turkish, or I want to say Slavic country of some kind based on what she's wearing. But if they were in like a traditional tent, then it might make sense to leave it. Like I like this backdrop, but all this other stuff could go, right? So this one could be for background removal, but let's just see what we can work with before we do that, right? So we've got the color. I'm going to make sure that I have chromatic aberration. Oops, where are we? Optics turned off. Okay, so chromatic aberration. And I'm going to apply it. Is there any noise in here? Oh, it's nice and clean. Okay, so I'm going to apply that. Okay. And then we could try relight. Okay. I find this tool honestly is hit and miss, and it's not my favorite because we can definitely brighten them, right? And this one takes a minute to catch up, and we can darken the background. Right? It's taking a minute to analyze the image. I wish it would tell us that it was doing something, right? Because it is doing something. There we go. Okay, so see how that did a good job, and it's really sort of picking up that there, okay? So brightening them, darkening the background, but it's picking up his hat as part of the background. We can fix that, hopefully, right? We can choose to cool the background off or warm it up. Again, remember, cool backgrounds recede, disappear. And depth means closer to them. So closer to them, now it's getting that thing behind them, which I actually don't want. If I go part way, though, it's getting his hat. So let's see that. See if I can get his hat. No, still wants to get his hat. Okay, so let me mask it off his hat. So I'm going to use erase. And let's just see if I can get this. There we go. Okay, so relight in this case is doing a nice job. Okay, and I've only applied it here based on the depth, because if I come closer, okay, it now gets that part, which I didn't want to darken. Okay. But if I go part way, it's fixing some of this roof issue as well, right? Something like that. Okay, so relight. Then we can do face AI. And, oh, there we go. And our face light, because that's going to help brighten them. Look at that. Okay. Like so. All right, we could darken their lips a little bit, whiten her teeth, all that stuff. I'm not going to go through all the portrait tools. I'm just going to deal with fixing this issue, okay? And then I would probably add a vignette, or I might actually try color harmony, because this has become one of my favorite tools as well, color harmony and color contrast, because I want to try and darken this stuff in the background here, right? So let's just see what happens as I drag it. And it's not affecting the background at all, is it? Not really. Okay, so this one's not doing what I want. Exit. I have another idea. Super contrast. Okay. Let's see what happens with highlight contrast. Okay, so that one is affecting the background. Again, I'm not looking at them. I'm just looking at this part back here behind her, right? And trying to darken it. See, that works as well. Medium. Okay. That's not really doing anything. Okay, so now I want it just there or not on them. So again, mask AI, and I could choose human and invert it. Right? So it does a lot of the work for you, and then you might be able to just mask it a little bit more. What's happening, Holly? Oh, been broken. Broken how? I think you said you were emailing me about that. But if you have a problem like that, what I suggest is go to your Skylum account. Log in here. And when you're logged in, here, let me do it on a different tab because I have it logged in on another tab here. You guys are getting an extra long bonus today. Okay, so over here, they've got a holiday sale as well. Come on, work with me. There we go. There we go. Okay, so when you're logged in, you'll see like your thing here, your icon or your name. Go to My Software, right, and do download from here. Okay, so it knows that I'm on Mac, and I just picked the one that's correct. So do a full uninstall, okay, meaning don't just delete the app folder or the app file. Do an uninstall. So if you have a program like Clean My Mac or something like that, right? Why is that not coming off the screen? For some reason, I cannot get Holly's comment off the screen. Let's see. Comments seem to be broken. Right. Yeah, comments are stuck. Well, I don't know what's going on. I think I got a weird internet connection, maybe. You did an uninstall following their support. Holly, I think at this point you need to test your computer because it actually could be a graphics card issue. If the images are turning black, I know that I had some issues with mine, and it needed to go get a diagnostic at the store. So at this point, I would check into it being your graphics card. Okay, so now I'm back here. I'm going to select human. And then when it's done it, I'm going to invert it. And I can't get the comments off the screen, Rob. I don't know what's going on with StreamYard right now. Okay, so see what's happening now is the adjustments that I've done in super contrast. So again, it seems to be, it doesn't pick up his hat as part of the subject. So I need to erase it from his hat again. For whatever reason, I guess people don't have white fuzzy heads, right? So you see what it's doing? It's darkening this background. And if I don't want it on here, I can erase it from there as well. Right? So I can just go do erase. So I don't want it here either. Oh, now I painted. Erase, 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 erase. There we go. So now it's just getting that background. Right? So that's one way. Oh, maybe I can get my comments fixed again. Fingers crossed. All right. Rob is saying that maybe your driver, check the chat, Holly, because Rob might have some suggestions for you. All right. Now, the other thing we could do, so that's before and after. Okay. So we're doing a pretty good job of toning that down. Okay. I could also do some work to blur this with the portrait bokeh. Okay. So let's take it quite high. Again, I like to do things to extreme degrees to see what it's doing. Right. Let's bring the depth closer. Again, it's going to blur his hat because it thinks the hat is not part of him. I'm going to have to mask it off his hat. So I'm painting it in with focus, right? So I'm telling it I want that part in focus. Now, for some reason, it also got some of her. So I'm just going to make sure it's got all of them, right? And I might decide I want to leave this here. So I don't want it to do any blurring on this part of this background because that's the only part of the background that sort of matches them, right? And then I'm going to defocus and make sure that it's got all the bits over here, right? Looks like it's not picking up part here, and I'll just go in here. And this is not my best masking. When you're doing masking like this, definitely zoom in closer, okay? So zoom in to 100%. All right, so come back here to my controls. So now we can darken the background. We can blur it even more. Let's bring the depth closer. Oh, and this is my reminder to, to do my monitor calibration. We got all kinds of crazy stuff going on now. There, see? That's my X-ray. So if you haven't done your monitor calibration, this is your monitor calibration device. And this is the one that I use. So it's reminding me it's time to do that. But not right now. Right? So see what's happening here in the background? See that? We're doing a nice blur. And it is picking up a fair bit of this, right? So I could actually tell it, okay, so I want to defocus all this mess up here as well and see if it would blur that part of the background also, right? Or we could just get closer and hopefully it picks up the background. Okay, there we go. So now I just need to mask his hat a little better. Let's see. My masking is definitely not perfect. I need to mask better than that, but that's pretty good, right? So see what that's doing? And we're just minimizing it, okay? And I would probably just add a vignette on here and call it a day. Now, if you had multiple images like this, again, you could create a preset in Luminar as well. But because we've done masking, those things, and I see that my internet is really choppy right now, so something's obviously going on. You can mask, when you save it, your mask gets saved as well. So just keep that in mind. So if you save this as a preset, which you can do down here, be very careful when you pull this menu up because one is revert to original, which gets rid of all your edits. And I've done that by accident and then went, oh no, because all my edits were done and I couldn't undo it. Okay. But if you save it as a preset, it saves everything. Okay. So then I could try the same one on Holly's image, but I'd have to redo the masking on some of the tools. Okay. So let's take a look at the before and after. Okay. Again, this is not an ideal picture, and I would probably do a background cutout on this one, right? So we can use the portrait background removal and remove the background. It's probably going to mess up with his hat again, but that's okay. We can mask that. We can tell it to fix it. And then I would put something different, okay? So use the refinement brush, and I'm just going to tell it that this is part of the object, right? So it should find more the edge of his hat. And I'm just gonna do this real quickly over top of all of the bits of them. Make sure it's getting all of them. So I'm painting over all the parts of them to be the object, okay? And then I'm just gonna go around the edge to tell it where the edge is. Okay, so I'm now telling Luminar this is the edge of the subject, and that's what the transition brush does. Okay, so you're literally defining the edge, and I do this all the way around the outside. It's still not perfect around his hat. I'll probably do that again. I'm going to come in a little closer. when you overlap like that, okay, when something is transparent, you'll get rid of it a little better. Okay, and I'm going to go in here and tell it that's the background. Yeah, I'm picking up some of the background here. It's having a hard time distinguishing between his hat and that funky background there. Same thing with her over here. Okay, so I'm going to tell it that that is the background. Yeah, it's really having a hard time with his hat, but CC Lightroom did too, right? This is the background. And it's having a hard time distinguishing between the pattern on her shirt and the pattern on the background, which is understandable. They're talking about graphics cards. Windows computers, yes, everything is graphics oriented. And if you don't have a good graphics card or your graphics card fails, you could see weird stuff like that. Or I've seen lines on my images and whatnot. So definitely get your graphics card tested, Holly, is my suggestion. Okay, I'm still not getting a great sort of outline here, but I'm just going to do a quick, trying to do my best here. Any other questions while I'm doing this, pop them into the chat and I will try and answer them. So yeah, it's having a hard time finding out the difference between like her head, for example, and the background, because there's lots of detail in this background behind her. Okay, but let's just see how we make out here. So when you close the refinement brush, right, we can still open it again. It's just catching up. And my computer seems to be running slow because I've got lots of stuff running and we're trying to stream. And I think our internet is doing some weird stuff. Can you guys hear me okay? Or am I choppy? Is it still catching up? Luminar is still catching up. There we go. Yeah, see, it's not got all of her there. So I need to do some more refinements on that. Let me get the edge of her. Missing part of her hat. And the trick that I showed before they come out with showing the background image, because we couldn't see the background image previously, is I would just hold this down, my backslash key, and look for where the actual edge of the subject is. So I'm painting in subject. Takes a moment to catch up. Yeah, this is a really, really tricky one because it's dark on dark. It's going to be tricky to remove. But let's see what happens if we put some kind of a background here. Interestingly enough, we just launched the Morocco background set. So let's see what happens. They kind of look like they could be Moroccan. Let's put this in the background. So this is one of my new Moroccan texture packs. And we also created a texture bundle, so kind of fits, but the masking is not good. So I would play around with this one a bit more. We could come up with something a little better than that background, but let's try. These are all colors from Morocco, which was actually really cool. So everything in that set is textures from Morocco, desert images. Remove that one. So let's see what happens when we get the blue one. Okay, so something like this, right? So I would play around with this. I could probably blur it a little bit as well and do the mask a lot better. But you have to do a lot of manual masking around in here because of the dark edges. It's having a hard time finding it. So I would play a bit more with the masking. Okay. So I am not going to do that to these guys. Let's just go back to what we had because I think that's better than the original. So I'm going to apply that and take it back to Lightroom and call it a day. So let me, when I get back to Lightroom, let me grab all my stuff here. Where are we? So just a reminder, this is the link for submitting your images. It's the same all the time. It will take you to the Google form. And we're looking for winter or ice photos, ice and snow, and street or urban. Okay, so anything city, urban related. There is a module in the Luminar course, Sheila. I've added that on portrait background removal. And I just did one on focus stacking that will be added to the course in the next couple of days. There's an HDR one, and I'm going to be working on one for background removal, which is not for portraits, right? So anything else, which is one of the extensions. And then I'll cover the other extensions, the noiseless or no noise, whatever it's called, the super sharp, and upscale. So I'll be doing extra modules to add those into the course for you very soon as well. And I don't know if my video is as choppy as I'm seeing it on my screen. Hopefully not, right? But submit your images for those topics. And just a reminder, I have something else for you. If you could please share the link for this, Rob. This coming Thursday, so 5 days from today, Daniel Korzanowski, who was my tour leader, and now I'm going to be his tour leader for a tour to Cuba. So if you would like to come to Cuba and join me, I am leading the tour. We have 2 Australians already. One lady from Miami, and yes, you can come if you're American. We arrange all of it, and it's all super legal. We get you the visa that you need and everything. It's all handled. And 1 Canadian. And I have a Canadian travel agent that can help you get there if you're in Canada. So I would love for any of you to come and join me in Cuba in February. It's this coming February. We still have spots left on the trip. And on Thursday, I gave you the link in Slack, Rob. I'll just open Slack because I have it myself. On Thursday, Dan and I are going to be doing a free webinar and basically answering questions and showing some of our Cuba images, right? So I've got it, Rob. There is the link to register for the webinar. It's free, but you just have to register, and then you'll get a link to join the Zoom call on Thursday. So we will answer any questions. We'll talk about some of our past tours. And we also have an extension at the end of this one, which is more portrait oriented, which fits right in with today. So just to give you an idea, like some of the things we'll be talking about this on Thursday, but let me just find some of my favorites here. Let me see. I wanted to show you guys this one. So this is the one that I wanted to show you where AJ asked about adding flash. Okay, so this has flash added. Can you see the difference on her face and how she's really bright? That's done with the lighting in camera. Okay. We're going on the Friday, Rob. So we're going to do Friday. And I wanted to show you the ballerinas. So some of the things that we photographed in Cuba. This one is Cuba. Where's my ballerinas? I'm looking for ballerinas. There we go. So some of the things that we photographed in Cuba, things like this. I'm going to make my screen bigger. Okay, so these are some of the things that we will do in the extension. Okay, so we had ballerinas. We went to a fishing village. We're trying to get some other special access to theaters and things like that. We made you visit a sports gym. So come and join us on Thursday. Even if you don't want to go to Cuba, come and visit and enjoy the images that we'll be talking about and the stories behind them. And it should be fun. Okay, and anyone that you would like to share that with, please share it. I'll be posting it in the group as well, and I'll mention that in an email that I have coming out in a couple of days to remind you if you haven't already signed up. So thanks, everybody. This has been an awesome session. Thanks for sticking around. I feel like my throat's a little dry, so I need some more coffee. I've been talking too much. What time Thursday? It is 7 p.m. Eastern. So 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. PST. Okay, so 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, whatever date that is. And Stan is reminding me that we also still have a challenge on the website for night creatures or night photography. There's really only 4 entries right now. Stephanie and Deb and Stan and one other person have entered. So right now you guys got like a 25% chance of winning a $100 gift certificate from us that you can then use on stuff in the sale. So you'll be able to get a ton of value on that. So we are going to do a stream on the 23rd. So we're going to do it Friday next week instead, because it's Christmas Eve and we don't want to disturb you guys, and it's be Christmas in Australia and New Zealand. So we'll see you a day early the coming week. So watch for the schedule. I'll be posting it in the groups shortly, but mark your schedule, mark your calendar for same time, just a day earlier. Okay. Take care, and we'll see you in 6 days.